Good morning, everybody. It's your favorite aspiring revolutionary here at the Neshoba County Fair, reminding you that we are all the authors of our own lives. As always, my message remains the same: spend less, live more, earn your freedom with frugality. I am nervous about recording in front of people, but I'm going to have to do it all week this week. So this will be a good exercise for public speaking. Anyways, Neshoba County Fair, just for you guys that don't know, it's been going on since 1889. Started off with roots. The initial one was called the Coldwater Fair, but it has roots in church gatherings and agricultural expositions. The first fair only lasted 2 days, but very quickly they started to build these cabins, and now it's a week-long event that everybody from Ronald Reagan to Conway Twitty has gone to. There's over 600 of these fair cabins and over 200 RV campers throughout the area. It's really pretty cool. I used to come here a lot as a child, like every year for like 10 years. Then whenever I went to college, I kind of stopped going for a little while. But we're going to talk a little bit more about the collapse of ancient empires. We spoke about the Bronze Age collapse last time and concluded that it was probably a systemic failure where multiple causes kind of contributed to the collapse of these ancient empires. One of them was the rise of Assyria, which is the first Iron Age empire. So now we're going to actually talk about the fall of Assyria. So in the Old Testament Bible, they are often featured almost like the Nazis. They're touted as being incredibly military sophisticated, but also brutal. They left tons of inscriptions about like Ashurbanipal II, one of their kings, flayed all their enemies alive. They use a lot of strategies that we see in other empires, where like they would conquer territories and they would generally be pretty nice to their subject populations, but if the people revolted, they were brutal to them, exterminated them. And then the Assyrians were really good about leaving these massive reliefs and inscriptions, kind of broadcasting what we would call crimes against humanity nowadays, and like how to try to keep people in line, basically. Anyways, so there's a Greek general, Xenophon, who wrote about discovering the city of Nineveh, which to us, Xenophon was already an ancient person, but to him, the Assyrian Empire was ancient already. It predated the Greeks by like 1,500 years and belonged to like some of our oldest urban civilizations in history, right? Now, history is kind of full of two geopolitical entities. You've got like the long-lasting players like China and Egypt, who've like they've had their ups and downs, but they've kind of always been around. And then you have the one-hit wonders of history, like the Mongols, where they kind of just explode onto the scene out of nowhere, and they're completely dominant for a long time, and then they kind of disappear, never to do anything relevant again. So in Xenophon's account, we see his descriptions of the abandoned Syrian cities, which were much larger and grander than anything that he saw in Greece at the time. So this was like evidence of like a previous golden age, right? So all these cities, they had walls like 50 feet long, 30 feet tall, much larger than anything the Greeks of Xenophon's time had built. And so he would even ask like the native peoples who these cities belonged to, and they told him that they belonged to the Medes, but they were actually Assyrian cities. So the Assyrian Empire fell so dramatically and quickly that within like 100 or 200 years, the native populations didn't even remember that they had been around. So to go from basically a superpower to people don't even remember, something pretty dramatic must have happened, right? Now, let's see here. At their peak, Assyria could field armies of up to 50,000 people, which nowadays isn't much, but back then, even just feeding and watering an army that size would have been an absolutely monumental task. And there is the horse track. We're gonna slowly return now. Yeah, so that right there is kind of just setting the stage for what's going to be we're going to do a few episodes on the Assyrian Empire, and we're going to realize a couple things in common with Assyria and other empires that have fallen. Oh, by the way, I am wearing the same clothes and have been for the last 3 days. Long story short, once you get inside here, it's kind of hard to get your stuff. Anyways, so the Assyrians had the greatest armies of the time by any means. They successfully combined cavalry, archers, spearmen, and created these mixed unit formations that just completely dominated the ancient battlefield. Now, this did lead to an issue. So, Assyria was never threatened too much by their neighbors or other powers in the region. Their biggest issue was dynastic struggles. So, just like the Romans, which would come later in history, the most powerful armies that the Roman armies ever fought were each other during these civil wars, right? Same thing with Syria, or at least very likely the same thing in Syria, where these dynastic struggles, whenever a king would die, basically Assyrian leaders would fight each other using Assyrian armies, the best ones at the time. And this may have kind of worn down their city centers and eventually led to their, destruction. Also, another thing that happened during the Roman Empire that also probably affected the Assyrians was something that I've kind of talked about in reference to our current culture. So, at first, Assyria their armies were all native-born people, like right from the Assyrian heartland, so they were loyal to the empire. Same thing with Rome. The initial Romans were actual farmers who lived on the Italian peninsula. Now, in both of these cases, as the empires expanded, they started to use mercenary forces from the territories they conquered. And eventually, conquered people made up most of their armies. Now, if you can't see the issue that right there might cause, then I'm not really sure. You might need some glasses. But it's a common thing that occurs with large empires that are militarily based, both in Rome and in Assyria and in other empires. Once you start using mostly mercenaries as your fighting force, their loyalty does not belong to the state, and it doesn't take much for an empire to collapse. That's really all I've got for you guys today. I'm going to be spending some time with my family here at the Neshoba County Fair, enjoying myself. I've still got regular work and stuff to do. We'll be here for the next week. There's rodeos. I'll be uploading stuff that we do to my Instagram throughout the week, so y'all can kind of stay up to date. It's a pretty cool experience. A lot of my family members like to go gambling. I'm not a huge fan of the casino. It kind of goes against the spend less, live more philosophy, but as always, that's really all I've got for you guys. This is a wandering author here, reminding you that we are all the authors of our own lives. Spend less, live more, earn your freedom with frugality. What are you guys doing to inspire, uplift, and empower your communities today? Because this world isn't changing unless we all do our part. You can count on me to do mine daily. Until next time, love y'all.